Hello there, welcome back to the channel. I am Carrie with bluescitypickin, and if you are new here, I am a part-time reseller that goes out to thrift stores, estate sales, yard sales, and finds things that I attempt to flip for a profit on eBay. We are at Ching number 15. This is for the week of December 8th, so by far one of my best weeks so far as far as number of items sold, and I believe that has obviously a lot to do with the Christmas season. I had, I believe, 46 items go out. One of those was a multi-quantity, so I sold 4 of the same thing to one person. All in all, not a bad week. You know, I was hoping for a bit more out of Q4, but I can't complain. Part-time, I just don't have the same amount of ability to put into this as somebody that does it full-time, so I'm super happy with my results. So I'll have gross sales, which is inclusive of taxes and shipping, the price, so the agreed upon price that I sold it for, what I paid for it, where I got it, and then my net profit after that. So let's get to the numbers. The total gross sales this week was $1,167.33. The sale price was $864.21. I had paid $180.24 for all of that. After taxes, fees, shipping, all that good stuff, I made $524.54. It's not too bad for a side hustle that I don't spend more than, 10, 15 hours a week on. So that's a pretty good hourly rate. My average sale price was $18.79, and my average profit per item was $11.40. You will see that I had not 1, not 2, but 3 items that I actually lost money on this week that are bringing that average down, as well as that multi-quantity item. I didn't make a lot on each individual item, but the total was acceptable. And there were a lot of older items that I shipped out this week, so I had taken some lower offers just to get them out of the store and move on. The average days in my store for this week were 111. The minimum was something that sold within a few hours of it being listed, and then I had a maximum of something that had been in the store for 305 days. So happy to get it gone. But without further ado, let's get into it. So the first thing that sold is this set of kids' gloves. These came out of a ThredUp mystery box. I put $1 cost of goods on everything in there. The buyer paid $6.80. Once again, when I say what the buyer paid, that's excluding shipping and taxes. And I made $4.23 in just 24 days. The next item is a Funko Pop. This is the child, or Grogu as we now know him, from The Mandalorian. This is from 2020. The buyer paid $4. I had 9 into this because I bought it new back many moons ago. So I lost $6.58. It had been listed for 234 days, but I am happy it is gone. Next up is a pair of white ice skates. This was a vintage ornament. It was felted. I thought it was super cute. The buyer paid $10. I paid $2 for these at an estate sale back in October. So I made $4.77 in just 47 days. I did take a lower offer on that because I did not want to sit with those for another Christmas season. Next up is a set of New with Tag New Emos. This was Nick Wilde and Judy Hopps. I had picked this up on a retail arbitrage, so I paid $13.48 for these. The buyer paid $18.85, so I made $4.90 after 193 days listed. Not something I would buy again. Next up is this Royal China Jeanette pecan pie baking dish. I bought this for $1 at an estate sale about a month ago. Buyer paid $12. My profit was $7.03 after just 4 days of being listed. Next item is this Ann Mashburn cashmere sweater. This goes into the category of good fabrics. Even if you don't look them up in the store, usually can still perform well for you. I had no idea that Ann Mashburn was a luxury brand. So I had picked up this black cashmere sweater because it was in good condition. It had no holes. It was only $5.99 at my local Goodwill. The buyer paid $45.89 and I made $34.98 in just 26 days. So very happy with that flip. And what you'll see in a lot of these is that my more recent flips have been better, and that is because I am learning more. As I go through this journey and I've learned more this year, I'm being more specific and selective in what I choose to pick up, whether that's bread and butter or, buying bulk lots and piecing and parting them out for the right price. But when I started this, I knew a lot. I didn't know as much as I could have. So I was picking up things that I would never pick up again. And I've learned what to pick up and what I need to comp. So I feel good about where I am. And that's why I'm not disappointed with my sales or my profits for this week, is because every single one of these is something that I've learned in my reselling journey. So I'm pretty happy with that. Next up is this vintage stained glass, like tea light. It was cast iron. It was an owl. It was a votive holder. Very, very cute. I paid $2.58 for this at an estate sale back in October. The buyer paid $18.90, so I profited $10.73. Oh, nope, $12.78 in 61 days. Next up is this Columbia fleece kids jacket. I did not realize it was a youth jacket when I picked it up. I thought it was an adult. I paid $3.56 for this back in September at Goodwill. It sold for $18.95, so I made $10.73 in 93 days. So I'm happy it's gone. I would not pick that up again, even though it was only $3. Next up is a sale. I'm going to have multiple sales from this. You may have seen in one of my shorts, I bought this gigantic train set from Goodwill back at the beginning of December. I paid $8.99 for the entire box, which was rather jarring and shocking. That never happens at Goodwill. I'm surprised they didn't have it marked at $29.99, but I'm very happy that they didn't. So this was a bundle. So there were certain ones that I listed by themselves because they could carry my $15 average on their own. And then there were certain that I put together. This is one that I put two of the less valuable pieces together, not only to get the average sales price up, but also to get it gone. And so this skid car flat with a culvert pipe and a flat car with pulpwood sold for $15. I had $1 cost of goods assigned to it, and I made $11.31. And this sold within hours of me listing it. The next item is also part of that train set. This was the smaller locomotive that was in the box. There were actually two locomotives that were in the box. You'll see the other one in a minute. This smaller one, it's untested. I couldn't tell if the light worked. So when I checked out comps, I found that it's not worth that much if you haven't tested it. So I sold this one for $15. I have $1 cost of goods into this, and I made, $13.63, and that sold within a day. So two quick sales from the Tyco train lot. Next up, I sold the actual canister part of this vacuum, I believe, a few weeks ago. This is the gift that keeps on giving. This is some additional parts for an Auric XL that I picked up at a local thrift store. The buyer paid $11.16. I had $1 cost of goods on these parts, so I made $10.59 after 100 days. Next item is one of my other losses for the week. I picked up this Kodak Easy Share at an estate sale Traditionally, I'd had good luck at this particular company's estate sales with their cameras and electronics. And so I did pay up for this. I paid $17 for this because it had a bunch of extras with it. And I was like, oh, that'll amp up the price, because that has been my experience. Unfortunately, I got it home. It turned on, but I could not get it to show that it could take a picture. So I just did not feel comfortable selling it as working. So I said, it's as is, read it. It came with a bunch of extra stuff, but I sold it for $13.95 and I lost $4.86, and it took 115 days to sell. Next up is a plush. You'll still see several plushes this week. Happy with my plush sales. I assume it's because of Christmas, but I don't mind. This was a Meoni black-footed ferret. It is by the brand Aurora. I did pay $2 for this at an estate sale back in July. I sold it for $9.95 and I profited $5.35 after 142 days. Next up is this 7 dinner forks from a bag of flatware that I had picked up at Goodwill back in October. This is the 1847 Rogers Brothers Remembrance Silver Plate. I sold the set of 7 for $11.99. I had $1.50 allocated to this portion of the flatware, so I made $8.84 in just 27 days. Next item is a vintage 1990s Christmas sweater. I mean, you could wear it for anything, I guess, because it's got a bunch of different colors on it, but I really liked it as a Christmas sweater. I picked this up for $6.99 at the Goodwill back in November. It sold for $20.96, and I made $8.04 after 28 days. Another bit of that train. This is the larger locomotive. So this had the big locomotive and a car behind it. I sold this for $40. I had $1 into it and I made $31.60, and it sold within a day of listing it. Next up is some chibis. These are Rainbow Bright micro figures. I bought these for myself because I collect Rainbow Bright. I was trying to finish out a set, and so these were some leftovers and duplicates that I had. There are 8 figures here, and if you do the math, I technically paid $28 for 8 figures, and so I sold them for $29, lost $4.81, but they sold with less than a day of listing, and I was able to recover some of my money as I tried to complete my own set, so I'm okay with that. Next item up is this Eddie Bauer pull-on. It's a long sleeve sweater. I think it was buttoned. It was an extra large tall sweater. I paid $4.49 for this at Goodwill back in February. And so I sold it for $20.16 and I made $13.75 after 191 days. I thought this one would sell better because it was like a fisherman style sweater, a custom size, vintage Eddie Bauer. I really liked it, but that didn't matter. So I will not be picking those up again. Another piece of the train set that I picked up. This is a remote control log dump car set. I sold this for $15. Once again, I had $1 into it, made $10.54, and it sold in less than a day. Next item is a JanSport backpack. It was pink and brown plaid. I paid $3 for this at Goodwill back in November. It sold for $14.96, and so I made $9.51 in just 33 days. Next item came out of a home clean out. These were new with tag, but they were Disney Retro Magic Kingdom socks. They sold for $13.80. I profited $10.82, but they had been listed for 154 days. Next up is the first of a few Atari things. So I bought a large Atari lot off of Whatnot. So you should be starting to see some of those items in my sales in the coming weeks. Was very happy so far with what I've been able to get out of it. This was a lot of 2 games, untested, bad condition, marks on the side, just kind of torn up. But so I went ahead and listed those for $9, and I made it $5.50, and they sold within a day of listing. Next item is this biscuit tin. It was an antique, like jewel tone tin with a floral motif. I paid $2.99 for this at Goodwill back at the very end of October. It sold for $13.49, and I made $10.31 in just 33 days. Next item is a vintage Otagiri spoon rest. It had this really cute Mrs. Mouse figure on it. I paid $1 for this at an estate sale back in August. She sold for $10, and I made $8.53 in 119 days. Next up is a multi-quantity sale. There are 4 vintage Spode, I think they're called Christmas Tree Tom and Jerry mugs. I'd paid $2.79 for these at Goodwill back in February. I sold a number of them right away, and then these were the last 4 that I had. The buyer paid $6.28 each, so after everything, I made about $2 a piece on them. Not worth it at that buy-in. If I found them for maybe $1 each, I would pick them up, but it's a lot of pain in the butt and space and breakables to hold on to for that long, for that little of a profit. So after 291 days, they are gone. Next up is a Harley Davidson hat. I picked this up at an estate sale back in November. It was really cute. It was black. It had studs on it. I did pay $3 for it, but it sold very quickly. I sold it for $10.80, and I made $5.92 in just 8 days. Next up is a set of 4 cork Pimpernel table, well, words are hard, placemats. I paid $8 for these in an estate sale back in November, and they sold for $23.95, and I made $8.83 in just 36 days. Next item is this is one of my better sales for the week. So this is a vintage drink tray. It was very pretty, very large. It had dragonflies on it. I paid $1 for this at an estate sale back in August. I sold it for $42. So I profited $29.87. It did take 114 days to sell, but anytime you're dealing with some of the home decor, you can plan on sitting on it for a while, but I was super happy with that profit and time to sell. Next up is a pair of leather pants that I picked up from Goodwill for $6.99 back in July. They sold for $26. I took an offer. There was little to no interest on these pants since they've been listed, so I was happy to get them gone, and I made $14.92 after 144 days. Next item, you may have seen it in a haul recently. This is a Naruto Shippu, I don't even want to say it. It's a Kakashi sling bag. I paid $5 for this at a local thrift store, thinking that my daughter would want to give it to one of her friends for Christmas. So I wasn't planning on reselling it, but then when I looked it up after she decided she didn't want to do that, I was like, man, this was a good pickup. So it sold for $35. Like I said, I paid $5 for it. So I made $22.76, and it only took 2 days to sell. Next up is a vintage fossil wallet. I picked this up at that same local thrift store that I found the Naruto, but I have had this since, since August. I paid $8.25 for it, so I did pay up, but it was in really great condition. The tag was still in it, and so it sold for $49, and I made $33.99 after 118 days. Next item is this vintage, I don't even know how to say that word. It's from 1970s. It's a stuff box. It is a tin. I paid 50 cents for this as an estate sale back in October. It sold for $14, and I made $9.08 after 42 days. Next up is a Thai classic husky dog. I paid $2.99 for this at Goodwill back in February. It sold for $8.50, so I made $3.78 after 239 days. Mark that down as a learning experience that they do sell. They are at the bread and butter price, so your buy-in needs to be $1 or less on some of these plush to make it worth it, for me at least, for storing it and taking up that kind of space in my storage area. But I'm happy it's gone and we're moving on. Next up is a pair of cabbie trouser pants. They are cropped. I paid $3.50 for these back in April at Goodwill. They sold for $18.90, so I made $10.97 after 231 days. Goodbye. I will not be picking up cabbie unless it's like a really unique piece. Like I've picked up a jacket recently that I thought was super pretty, but just kind of like their normal stuff doesn't seem to be selling, so I will be passing on cabbie for a while. Next up is another part of the Atari lot. This was a 810 rear board replacement, fancy computer type things. I don't pretend to understand. I sold it as untested as is, and I am not offering returns on these Atari parts, or at least not offering free returns on the Atari parts. I normally have free returns, but for these I have decided no, because I don't want to deal with that. So I have $1 into this, sold for $15, made $11.05 in just 2 days. Another plush. This is a vintage Sugarloaf plush. It is a polar bear. I picked this up at Goodwill for 99 cents back in February. He sold for $13.85 and I made $9, but it did take 305 days to sell. Next up is a vintage 1990s Christmas tapestry Afghan throw. I paid $4.99 for this at Goodwill back in July, and it sold for $24.95, so I made $13.59 in 143 days. Next item is this, also one of my better sales for the week. This is a wood shelf that you would hang. It is definitely rustic. It was really cute. Had a mirror. I sold this for $39. I paid $5.28 for this at Goodwill back in September, and my profit was $29.78 after 85 days. So super happy with that. Next up is a personal closet clean out item. This is a Ann Taylor Loft women's brown button jacket. It had like a cargo cotton material. It was in a size 12. The buyer paid $18.50, so profit of $15.28 after 106 days. Coming down to the last few, we have a vintage 1960s magnetic chess game. This came out of an auction lot back in May where I have already assigned all of the costs, so I have zero cost of goods in on this. The buyer paid $8.06, so I made $6.46. And it took 199 days to sell. Next item, another plush. We have a How to Train Your Dragon, Gronkle, I believe is the dragon's name. This is Meatlug's dragon, just in case you didn't know. Not a very big plush. I paid $1.99 for it at Goodwill because I just love How to Train Your Dragon. Make good choices, don't do what I do. But in the end, it did sell for $11.80 and I made $8.16, but it did take 251 days to sell. Ooh, I think this is my best sale of the week. Yep, so this is from, you will continue to hear me talk about it. I bought a ton of toys off of Whatnot in a large lot from actually the same vendor that I bought the Atari lot from. It was a lot of weapons and just a lot of little bitty things. And so this was, the Google Lens did me well here. Let's see if I can say this properly. This is a Golden Pharaoh staff, Superpowers vintage accessory. It's from 1985 or 1986, and it is a replacement piece. I put $1 as my cost of goods on all of these items. It sold for $55, and so I made $44.40 in 25 days. Super excited that a tiny little piece of plastic can sell for $55. Don't sleep on vintage, like action figure accessories, because you got folks that are digging through their stuff. They find the toys. They don't have the accessory. They want the accessory. Where else are they going to go besides eBay? And last, but certainly not least, we have this Intermatic like outdoor timer. I bought these for $3 a piece. I think I bought 5 or 6 of them back in March. So they have taken a while to sell. I think I still have one left. It sold for $25.97, and so I made $17.19, and it had been listed for 279 days. So, good week, lots of sales. I hope that your December is going well and that you are getting your store moving and clearing out some of that old stuff, as well as bringing in new inventory and selling off the good stuff for good prices. If you like this kind of content, I would genuinely appreciate a like and subscribe, and give me a comment down below on whether this kind of information is helpful or not. And I will see you in the next one. Thanks again. I'll see you next time.